Good afternoon to the viewers of the next series on YouTube or in Facebook. I am Eya Bisenio. I used to be a grade school reading teacher from 2015 until last school year. I'm currently a program assistant in the Student Activity Program Office of Xavier School San Juan in the high school. So this afternoon, I will be sharing some of my experiences when it comes to literature-based makerspace. I'll be explaining first of all what is design thinking, what is literature-based makerspace, and how do we go about it. I'll be sharing some tips I've learned along the way, as well as some activities that I've made my students do. So for the information of many, Xavier School San Juan is an all-boys school. So a lot of the examples would be contextualized rather in that manner as well. So before I begin, I know a lot of us are questioning the caption that was posted for my session because it talks about problem solving, creativity, it talks about discussions when we're used to a reading classroom as something that is quiet, something that is serene, something that talks about peace. It's a peaceful classroom. When in fact, a reading classroom could be just like what my students are doing here. They are discussing, they are building with recyclable materials. These were my students 2 years ago. And in fact, something that is creative as well. This is a heater my students created in one of our sessions. I'll explain why they created a heater later and how come they were able to come up with it in the when I discuss the activities. Now, I know a typical reading classroom could be something that is boring for students, especially for I'm a teacher from an all boys school, so when we talk about reading, there's really a certain age or a certain point that they're still quite excited about it. But um, the older they get, they tend to be a little dissuaded from reading. They find it boring. So it was really a task. It was quite a task that I put on myself and my teammates to make sure that reading is not just something that they will forget eventually. So, when I discuss the activities and how to go about it, I will also be telling you about some experiences, okay, how we were able to get over it, and how my teammates and I worked to make sure that the activities that we will be planning will work. So, first word that I would like to unlock with you is makerspace. So when we say a makerspace in Xavier San Juan, we have a collaborative workspace inside the school. It's actually in our library, and it's a facility where students can build. It's a space where they can make stuff, where they can create things. And contrary to popular opinion, sometimes it uses no tech tools at all. So I'll be showing you the no tech tools first so that you can learn how to contextualize it as we go further, especially now that we are in an online classroom setup. So in Xavier, in our school, we have what we call the makerspace area. So we had a drive for the students and the parents to donate recyclable materials. So things that they are not using anymore. So old gadgets, some uh, containers, okay, some paper are there. And then we have workbenches. They're absolutely bare. And this and just like what I showed you in my video earlier, the students bring the materials or get some materials from the shelves and they build um, in on those workstations. Now, just some 5 points that I would like to go about this afternoon. After I discuss design thinking, I will also be discussing the following points. So making reading tangible, some sample activities, and modifying for different readers, as well as recontextualizing for online classrooms. So I discussed first what is a makerspace. So it's something that we all share. It's a common knowledge that we share as I go along this short webinar. Now, when we talk about design thinking in Makerspace, we talk about 5 main steps. Okay, usually design thinking is seen in advertisement in the advertisement industry. Excuse me, and we see it as a way to get to know their clients better. So, how is this design thinking steps, process, procedure still applicable in education? How can we adapt it? How can we make sure that it's something that's applicable to education, especially reading? When we because when we think about reading, sometimes we think about it as a very rigid skill subject in which we just teach the students really the different techniques on how to read. But as you will see later, and as you will see as I discuss further, design thinking is actually it's a very intuitive, it's a very fit set of procedures or skills. A way of discussing a novel, for example, it's actually quite a great fit because we get to see things from another point of view, and the students have more connections to whatever they are reading because they're able to apply it, they're able to do something about what you are asking them to read, rather than just asking them to read the text or just read their book. Now, when we do design thinking in reading, they get to push it a little further. They get to really think about the characters, their predicaments, how they are. They get to really think about um, putting themselves in the place of the characters or whoever they're reading about. May it be a feature article about some students who are having trouble coming to school, etc. So the 5 steps in design thinking are actually non-linear, meaning you can go back to a step and you can go back to a certain part again after finishing it because in design thinking, it's really a messy process. You can't get to testing without really brainstorming about it, and you can brainstorm so many ideas that so many possible solutions can appear, but it's not the solution that your group is asking for, or it's not the kind of solution that you would want your group to have. So design thinking starts with empathizing. So you learn more about the target audience. Who are you making for whom is the product or the advocacy or the campaign? You get to know what their pain points are, meaning the things that make them a little down, or the things that they want to achieve, the things that make them suffer. Okay, so it's really empathizing. It's an exercise that we start with. Why do we need to empathize? Because we need to define what the problem is. So sometimes in reading texts that we give our students, the main problem has already been defined for us. But there are times where certain texts, especially the informational text, info texts, sometimes the main problem is not that clear cut. So sometimes we give room for the students to identify what the main problem is on their own. But basically, in the define stage, we really consider what point of view are we trying to look at? What particular problem do we have at hand? Okay? And after we define, we try to brainstorm now as a group. After we define what it is that we would like to discuss or to solve, we now come up with a lot of ideas as a group. And then after ideation, there will be a lot of ideas, I'm sure, that your students will come up with, but there will be only one solution that they will prototype or they will try out. And then when they test it, like whether it's just a matter of feedback giving as a test or whether they actually build something, um, it's it will always go back to prototyping or ideation because sometimes there are things in the test stage that will not be aligned with what they're trying to what problem they've identified or they've defined in the beginning. So sometimes it goes back to ideation, then prototyping again, then testing again, or if it's not the project that they're doing, the feedback that the students will get from the teachers and the classmates will be enough for them to go back to a certain step because they were not able to address whatever they were really trying to address the first time. Now, all of these steps, just like what I said, nonlinear, um, come up with a certain structure. So they become a certain structure for students to think. And through going through all of these steps, students are able to, from my observation, my students are more able to empathize, more able to think about the context of the story, more it then and then because they're thinking like that, the story or the text becomes more memorable to them. So when we think about design thinking, we think about how the the text or the story that they're reading becomes more tangible to them. Tangible how? Okay? Because when we talk about reading, even if they are students who are very creative, very imaginative, when they think about certain elements of the story, whether they picture it well in their head, sometimes it just stops as an abstract idea and doesn't really become more relatable to them because they are not tangible. So, how do we make reading tangible? How do we make sure that reading is still something that they can see, that they can touch, and not just an abstract idea? So, a couple of school years ago, my GEM students, I also used to teach the advanced classes for grade 6 and grade 5 at some point in the previous school years. We had two assigned reading um, texts or novels. So for the GEMS class, it was The Book Thief by Marcos Zuzak. So there's a lot of things to unpack there, a lot of ideas to discuss with the students. So we make it tangible for students who are younger readers. So they might be precarious, they might be reading above their level, but um, uh, precautious rather. But we try to make reading more appealable, more understandable, and of course more tangible to them. So I'll show you a couple of assessments, a couple of activities that we've done in GEMS class and the regular reading class in terms of literature-based makerspace. So for the regular class, we um, put it in a performance task. So whenever we make literature-based makerspace activities, or whenever we make um, uh, makers literature-based makerspace activities or design thinking activities, we always present it as grasps, as a performance task. So in wholes, just the gist of the story, so you get to understand where the PT is coming from. So they're in Camp Green Lake. Camp Green Lake in the story, the one of them, actually the main setting of the story, is a juvenile delinquent camp. So after their trial, they're asked to choose whether they want incarceration, prison, or they want to be put in a camp. So Camp Green Lake is one of the options there. So it's basically a very dry place. It's a desert in the middle of nowhere. There are yellow spotted lizards. There is a clear uh, lack of um, hygienic places. The waters are always rationed, so students don't get not students. Uh, the delinquents who are in Camp Green Lake are not able to take proper care of themselves in terms of hygiene. So there's also food scarcity because it's in the middle of nowhere, so everything has to be delivered there. And plot twist, for if you have not read it, it's actually an illegal camp run by um, the warden inducing child labor to find something. So we identified those. We narrowed down the themes to faulty water irrigation systems, a yellow spotted lizard infestation, and food scarcity. So given the three problems, the performance task is now asking the students to be putting themselves into the role of an urban planner. So what is it that he's going to do? He's going to be trying to address the faulty water irrigation systems, yellow spotted lizard infestation, and food scarcity. And then they're going to be teaming up with other urban planners in the district to come up with one product that they will pitch to the warden and to the district governor, that are solutions that are supposed to be informed, feasible, efficient, and attainable due to budgeting restraints. So later on, I'll show you the different outputs of my students and how they went about the process. So after doing that for the regular class, we also I also designed something that is similar, but in the context of another novel. So the book thief has a lot of things to unpack, yes, but I tried to make it a little bit more easier for them to digest. Um, so for the task for the GEMS class, as an inventor who's looking for a big break, he's going to design something, whether it be fortifying the bomb shelter that because it's book thief is set in the Second World War. So either it's fortifying the bomb shelter of the house or designing something entirely different, whatever problem they identify. Okay, so for the gems, it's a little bit more flexible. We did not really specify what it is that we're going to be solving. So for them, there's a little more leeway for them to think about it. So the ideation part was actually very interesting because they each thought of a different problem. So um, for this group who tried to consider it from the main character's point of view, from Liesel's point of view, they decided to make another product. For this group who thought about it from another character's point of view, they thought of another solution and a product. So it's really a meeting of minds. And then after that, it's similar to the regulars. They have to present whatever they came up with to a board. And um, in this case, the residents of Himmel Street, so where the setting was in the book thief mainly. So all of them, both activities started off with an empathy map, trying to get to know the characters from their point of view. And from all of these, I noticed just some things that I wouldn't really normally notice in a normal reading class. So there's openness. I heard a lot of discussion. In the videos that I showed you at the beginning of the session, you will see that they had collaboration. A lot of raised voices, but they're not fighting. They are discussing ideas excitedly, both for the reading regular class and the GEMS class. And then they had critical thinking because as I was listening to the back and forth of ideas, it was not just a simple whatever goes. So parang it was not just a simple um solving it for the sake of solving it. They were really trying to get down to business, to get to the bottom of things. What is it really that they're trying to solve? And aside from that, from critical thinking and problem solving, they also developed a deeper appreciation of the book and its themes. So later on, when I show you examples, they were actually trying to explain, because that's part of the performance task. The continuation assessment, the next assessment after the Makerspace, is actually the oral presentation. So making a pitch to deliver your ideas and making someone buy it or support your idea, because a part of the performance task was getting sponsors to fund their solutions. So after that, when I was listening to their oral presentations, I was hearing them defend why there was a need to put this material, why there was a need to put specifically place this object here, or why a particular solution to this problem would be this contraption that they made. So aside from reading it, understanding it, crying, about the themes or finding injustice in it, they pushed it a little bit forward. We all know that they're still in grade school, there's only so much that they can do. But by putting themselves into this activity, by putting themselves in the shoes of the character, they're able to push their understanding a little bit further. There was more and a deeper understanding of the themes of the text because of that. But making reading tangible is not just for fiction. It doesn't stop at fiction. Okay, for the sample activities, I'll also be showing you a non-fiction example, informational text example, so you can see how the students are able to make it. Okay, so it began with the design thinking steps. So we went through it again, we reviewed what we're supposed to do for each step, and then an additional assignment for them was to be assigned into roles, because whenever we do makerspace activities in class, whether it be in reading class or other subjects, there will be different roles that they will take to make sure that everyone does his job, especially for the higher levels, because in the higher levels we also have a peer evaluation in which the group mates grade a classmate, and then they give feedback whether he was able to perform his role or not and contribute to their group project. So, aside from assigning team roles, we also went through an empathy map. So, this is a sample, a blank template sample. So, for this activity, I'm going to be showing you both the informational text and the examples of the activities and how they did it in the process and their finished products. So, um, for the text, we went through the grasps again, and then uh, we discussed which character they would like to focus on. So that's part of the defining stage. They will choose which character or which problem they will be defining or they will be trying to solve. So after identifying that, they answered the first worksheet. So I'm showing you right now, the example I'm showing you right now is from a later activity that I will explain. But basically, this activity is a tie-up with social studies, and it was about an advocacy campaign that they would like to show in their documentary for a victim of martial law. So after accomplishing everything, they now get to define the problem. So after they accomplish the empathy map, they will now have their preliminary planning. So what problem would they like to solve? And then after they define the problem, they will go into groups. They will discuss what their main solution will be. So this is where a lot of discussions will come in. The paper will have a lot of erasures because they will be putting all of their ideas together. And from what I can see, from what I remember from my students' outputs, it's not just one person in the group's idea. Everyone wants to have his own idea represented in their final output, which is nice. So if you notice, there's a lot of erasures for this one because they were trying to compromise. They were trying to put everyone's ideas in it without sacrificing the believability or the feasibility of the product. Okay. And then, after we did that, we scheduled sessions to go to the Makerspace corner, to the Makerspace area in the LRC. And then they started to build their prototypes. So, in the middle of preparation, so I went to each table, made sure that they were on track. I was counter checking I was counter checking their plans, what they plan to do, and then that's where I give feedback. So in a way, in this stage, we were already doing prototyping and testing because we were already giving feedback. And then when they finished it, because we that's another problem with that's a problem I would like to present in having this kind of assessment. Sometimes we don't have enough time to accomplish the full steps, everything at the same time, or go through the actual process of building and giving and testing and prototyping again. So what we did was we showed that each group showed their final output to the class. the classmates gave feedback, I gave feedback, and then they sort of modified it to make it the final output that they will be showing in their sales pitch video. Okay? And then, as you can see, they're the ones doing it. Okay? And then testing now, after we gave feedback, after we told them how they could improve it, given what they want to accomplish, they made their sales pitch. So the first video, the one with the white box that has check it out, is from my GEMS class. So a solution, a product, an invention that they made was identity changerator. So it's this tablet with a keyboard and a laser to to change the person's identity. So whatever you type there will be the change. What image will be changed? So he's showing how it will work. So they're recording. It's one of the people who will be explaining how it works. And then this other one is a catcher of yellow spotted lizards. So it's like a contraption that they're making. So he starts by saying, we received a lot of complaints telling us about yellow spotted lizards, so we're now giving you a solution to solve that problem. So it's like a mousetrap times 100, has metal spikes, and then later on, he will show it in the video, the actual product, after he explains it. So let's wait until he shows it. There. So they made it, and they tried to make it work. Okay. So these are classes of boys who love to build and create things, and now they're actually able to do so in a reading classroom. Okay, and just a reminder, even if you don't go through the actual testing and prototyping, feedback is already a form of testing because you're giving the students feedback in any time or all parts of the process. So you're very free to give feedback as a test to make them improve their prototypes. Okay, and they can be written and verbal in nature. So either commenting on the empathy map or the small group plan that I showed you earlier, or joining a small group discussion and asking questions during a presentation. Now, given everything that I've shown you so far, I just like to show you the process, how it goes about, how they do it. I did not have any input with the design. I just basically ask questions, especially for my GEMS class, because they have so much ideas. They have so many ideas to share. They have so much to give. So what I really just did was join their discussions and then ask how it works, how will they make it work as they plan to, etc. And then they build the products themselves. Even the gluing together, the putting together what goes where, it's their choice, and they did it all in their own. Even my regular classes. So on the lower right corner, you will see a contraption like with a Lego part. It's actually a catcher. They developed a solar powered catcher that catches the yellow spotted lizards and then recycles them into energy. And then the middle picture, the one with the bottles, is actually a working filter. So they decided to solve the problem on the scarcity of water. So someone actually got pond water from their home just to try and test out their filter for Camp Green Lake, and it actually works. Okay. So it's actually the one in the middle, the picture in the middle, that's how our reading class looks like. So a lot of standing, a lot of going around, a lot of building, talking to each other. And then after that, we prepared for their oral tests. So they recorded their sales pitch. Everyone has a part in the sales pitch. Everyone has a thing to say about their product, how to pitch it. And then they recorded it, put the videos together, and came up with one product. So that's 2 assessments in 1 activity. So that's building design thinking, literature-based makerspace, and then a sales pitch that comes afterwards for persuasive speech assessments. Aside from that, just like what I said, it doesn't stop at fiction. So now we will be looking at it, how to modify it for different readers and how to modify it for an online classroom. Because Makerspace is not just building, inventing, it's actually other outputs as well. Excuse me. So, modifying it for different readers, I'll just quickly talk about, because as you can see, it's from an intermediate classes context. So older boys get to do it for my level. But there's actually still a way to modify it for different readers. So for early education or for non or pre-readers, there's still a way for you to do literature-based makerspace. So one way to do it is to have the text be read by the teacher. So since these are non-readers, it's a short story, a short text, okay, read by the teacher, in which the main problem has already been figured out. So you tell the students what the main problem is, and then you give them materials, and then you give instructions in a way that would ask them to make use of what they have. So practicing resourcefulness. So you give them the materials, you identify the problem in the story, and then they work in groups to come up with a solution to solve the problem of the character. Something as easy as that. That's already a modified design thinking, literature-based makerspace for early readers. For primary levels, grades 1 to 3, so a little bit of responsibility can already be given to the students. So a short text, a slightly longer text is given by the teacher, whether it can be a part of the novel or the assigned reading that they are reading, can be an article, an informational texts rather, just like what I was saying earlier, and then it can also be something of a news article. So any of those. The text is read by the students, and then we introduce the empathy map, but we only look for simple answers. Okay. Now, this is the difference between the primary and intermediate and the early education and the primary. For primary levels, since you already asked them to do an empathy map, okay, the instructions and solutions that you will be giving them will be more convergent. So you try to prescribe now. You tell them what the problem is identified, and then you present them with the empathy map, and then it's sort of it's still asking them to be creative and solve problems, but you sort of guide them along the way. Okay, you give a little bit of leeway, but it's more towards a convergent type of thinking. So similar could be a similar output for all groups. So an example could be a text, for example, about um, um, uh, uh, students who live in the rural areas who cannot go to school because they have to cross a river. So your design thinking makerspace activity, literature based makerspace activity could be something like designing a shoe or designing a bag, designing a raft that will get them through um, crossing. So you already identify the problem, you already give some parts of the solution, and then it's really their creativity will come out in the differentiation of design. Because some of them would like to focus more on the rocky terrain or the slippery water. So the design of the shoe or the slipper will be different from that of another designer slipper of another group who decides to focus on another thing. Okay? And we also start to assign the roles here in the primary levels. For intermediate levels, since they are more independent and we can ask them already, more ideas will already come out, basically. A longer text is given, can be the assigned reading, just like what we did for Book Thief and Holes. Text is independently read by the students. The empathy map will be more descriptive and in-depth. Sorry, that's in-depth. And you make sure that um the empathy maps are not just giving you one word answers. And this is where we assign divergent solutions. So you give them the grasps, this is the situation, but it's your turn now to decide what character you would like to focus on, which character you would like to focus on, what particular problem of that character or what particular problem of the text would you like to solve. So this is more brainstorming already, asking the students to come together, brainstorm their different ideas and come up with a solution. Okay, and just an added responsibility, peer evaluation can be given for accountability of the members of the group. Now, I know you're asking, this setup is very hands-on. It's very it's set for the students to meet every day. So how can we recontextualize it for an online classroom? How do we make sure that it's still fit for an online classroom? First of all, okay, when we recontextualize for online classrooms, it's not just an actual output that they can make. It's not just something that they can build with their hands. It can be a tie up with another skill, or can be a poster, an infographic can be presented there. Okay? Just like what we did in the same grade level, grade 6, for one of our assessments. So, just to give you a background about this assessment and performance task, um, there was a quarter, third quarter. We don't have quarterly test for that quarter, so assessments are spread. So to total 100%. So we had media literacy for this whole quarter. We started with propaganda techniques, the different kinds, so glittering generalities, appeal to fear, etc. And then we had film elements or elements of film. And then the last unit for this quarter is a documentary making. So an application of both propaganda techniques and elements of film in an assessment. So it's like it's a summative assessment of all the skills that they have learned in the quarter. So this one is actually a tie-up with other subjects. Okay, so it's the last unit in the media literacy quarter. It's a tie-up with social studies, Filipino, CLE, and language, because during that quarter they were discussing the martial law. So, um, the presidency of Ferdinand Marcos. Okay, and then um, we met first as individual teachers as a group. We talked about we talked about the points of synergy, and then we told them that this is our skill for this quarter. And then the social studies was the one who supplied us with the context. So for their last assessment for the third quarter, they were asked to make a film, a short film, a mini documentary, applying propaganda techniques and applying elements of film. So they were asked to, because they had a lot of input in social studies, they were asked to choose as a group. They were already grouped beforehand. As a group, they will be choosing martial law victim that they would like to make a mini documentary about, and we also discussed for this quarter what an advocacy is. So what would be a perfect advocacy to make, to push for, considering this martial law victims' experiences. So make a mini documentary about that. So we discussed what advocacies are. We give them exemplars. Exemplars are very important. So we showed them a short documentary by Cara David of Eyewitness. So this one is about two boys who are farming illegally before in Abra some honey so they can have money to enroll. Okay. After that, after we showed the exemplar, so they now have a more or less an idea of what we will be expecting from them. They answered an empathy map. So for this group, they chose Hilda Narciso, one of the martial law victims that they discussed in social studies. So they detailed basically what she went through, what her pains were, what she wanted to achieve, etc., what happened to her. And then they made a documentary. So I'll just show you quickly. So they brought props to school. They shot in school also during the reading periods. Okay. And then they they storyboarded this. They came up with the scenes. They came up with how to shoot it. They edited it themselves also. But funnily enough, this is still a makerspace assessment. It's still a literature-based makerspace assessment based on what they have talked about in um, in another subject, but applying the skills that that they have learned for the reading class. Now, just further discussions on how to further recontextualize this for online classrooms. Please don't limit it to just building things, just like what you saw at the beginning. So it's not limited to just inventing, creating physical products. They can be reflected in infographics, can be an advocacy they would like to push forward, can be a mini documentary, provided that you discuss the skills with them. Could be in short films, a call to action, a small project. But what is non-negotiable for all of them is empathy. The empathy map is very, very important because it's basically the main reading skill that you're targeting. It's characterization. It's making inferences. It's making judgments also. So empathy mapping is a non-negotiable skill, especially for higher level readers. So putting themselves in the shoes of the characters or topics of the text to help them understand it and appreciate it more. And the output need not be complicated or use sophisticated programs. It just so happens that the batch already knew how to edit videos in iMovie, so that's what we chose. But it can be very simple. It doesn't have to be very complicated. It can be as easy as making simple memes, provided that you have the rubric to support and to grade it the way you taught it. Posters, vlogs, and other common and low-cost digital products. So what I'll be showing now for the rest of the slides will be some um, online free, because we are in the middle of pandemic and we cannot afford subscriptions. The subscriptions are also quite expensive, especially for US based apps. So I'll be sharing free um, applications or online tools for you to help you get started in doing design thinking and literature-based makerspace in your class. So I'll be showing online collaboration tools, presentation tools, and other video editing tools. Okay, for collaboration, especially when you're already in the defining and ideation part, okay, one free online collaboration tool that you can use is Padlet, especially Canvas, the one that you see there, the second box, because it allows the students to connect certain parts, certain uploads on the Padlet wall to connect ideas. Okay, could be also maps, timelines. It's up to you what you will be using. Padlet is generally free for the first few Padlet walls, but it's if you want to create more, there's going to be a subscription. So a hack, something I do, is that I I create a Padlet wall initially, and then download the results or take a screenshot of the results, clear the Padlet wall again, and then create it and choose another template and then create another Padlet wall out of it. So I just basically just reuse the free Padlet walls. Okay. Another online collaboration tool that is free is Poplet. So it's really, really good for concept mapping. It's good for connecting ideas for them to brainstorm. Another online collaboration tool that is very helpful is the G Suite apps. So Google Docs and Google Slides especially, because you can just make a template of the um, of the planner sheet on Google Docs or in Google Sheets. Make a copy for each student or ask them to share to their group mates, and then they can just collaborate online there. Especially now that Zoom has for education account, Zoom has a breakout session. So, uh, a break there's a feature that you can assign the students to breakout groups, meaning to smaller groups within the plenary. Okay, so you can do that. And then Jamboard, Google Jamboard. So jamboard.google.com. It's basically like a whiteboard that they can use to plan their activities there. Okay. So online collaboration tools. So if you know more, you're very free to comment or to share with the other participants. But these are just some of the things that are free for us as educators. All right. So for presentation tools, if you're asking them to make posters, presentations, a certain graphic, Canva is very, very free, especially if you're using an education account, an education email, because Canva for Edu is also giving you pro features for free for teachers and students. Okay. If you want portfolios, if you don't want a poster or infographic, you can use portfolio creation as well. So Book Creator is free, app.bookcreator.com. It's basically a free ebook creation tool. So you can plan it by page. You can have it landscape or portrait. You can save it as an EPUB version or a PDF version. So it's basically a portfolio tool. Another sort of presentation tool is Flipgrid. So how the Flipgrid works is to as a teacher, you create a prompt for example, my summer vacation, and then the students reply with videos. So it's like an Instagram wall of Instagram stories, but for education. So they get to edit it with filters, with texts, with stickers. Okay, so basically it's a video wall of student responses. Okay, audio video editing tools that are free. Bytable.com is very, very free. It also has templates that you can choose from. So the templates can be part of your instructions. So choose this template, etc. Another audio video editing tool is Adobe Spark. So spark.adobe.com. The only downside to this is that for you to have easier compilation of their submissions, you have to create an email, or you have to share your email, or for it to sync easily to the cloud. If not, you can just ask them to create it in their own devices and then upload it in your online LMS to be compiled. So can be CISO, can be Google Classroom, can be Schoology, or whatever LMS your school is using. You can also ask them to submit the file that has already been downloaded, that has already been generated, so not the working file in their devices anymore. Just some last tips. I know I had a lot of things to say, and I can't wait for your questions in the question and answer portion. But just some last minute things that I would like to give you, just to make sure that everyone is on the right track. Okay. First thing is to identify a text or reading material that is rich in context. So, infotexts like news articles, they would really, really work, especially if there's a clear problem, or there's a clear thing the article is talking about. So just like the example I gave earlier, so students who are having trouble coming to school, that's a good place to start. You can already group them beforehand to help with distribution of tasks and seamlessness, because if you just wait for each class or each synchronous session to group them, then it will take up much of your time. It will be also easier for them to work if they already know who they will be working with. Okay. Have group and peer grades, especially for the higher levels, because it helps them become accountable for their responsibilities. Assign roles. So just like what I showed earlier, could be a modification, especially now that we're online. And synergize with other subjects. Chances are, whatever you're discussing, another subject might be discussing something similar. So it's best also to synergize with them. But most of all, have fun. So the students will only have fun if you also have fun discussing and making them if you're also genuinely interested on what they're going to do, or what their ideas are. But allow as much exploration as they can, especially now that we have a chance to assign asynchronous activities, have them do things on their own, especially for the higher levels. So just really think about your texts, or whatever texts that you might choose. So really have fun. The students will copy, will see how you're excited, and they will copy your excitement also. They will also feel excited because you're excited about it. So just really have fun. Trust in the process. It wasn't easy at the start. It wasn't easy starting all of these at the start, but as you go through it, as you see your students benefiting more from their reading activities because of it, it's really, really um, it's fulfilling to see them not just reading but actually understanding a character's predicament better because of what they're doing, or you see them enjoying more because of what you're doing as a class. So I'm very excited to hear your questions, and um, this is where I end my presentation. If there are questions, if there are other things that you would like to ask me, I will later on during the question and answer part of our session, I will be giving my email address and some of my social media accounts, so you can message me if there are questions or if there are some clarifications that you would like to make. I'm very excited to see you get started on your journey on literature-based makerspace and design thinking, and I hope to hear about it as you go along. Thank you for listening.